Hey, welcome everyone. Today I've got a special guest, 20-year expert in HR, a CHRO, and a consultant in HR, who has served in healthcare, manufacturing, service industries. I wanted to welcome Andrew Loomis to the show. Lots of things to talk about: labor relations, strategy, organization design, conflict resolution, and of course, the topic of the day, AI. So welcome, Andrew.
Thank you for having me, Jonathan.
So why don't you give a quick intro about yourself and how you got into HR and what fascinates you about HR today?
So I got into HR a little bit by luck. I'd come out of college, was working some dead end jobs, starting a family, got hit by a layoff, something people are experiencing right now. But I was young and ambitious and decided, okay, I got to do something longer term. Found a temporary opening at a little company in my area, got hired on this temp job and did a good job for them, these administrative functions. And the boss told me, hey, I don't have anything full time, but this labor relations director next door does. You should talk to him. So I did. I talked to him and I pestered him almost daily until he finally got frustrated and said, hey, listen, if you can make it till July, I'll give you the job. And that was the beginnings of it. To answer the second part of your question, what I think is interesting about HR right now is what's always been true about HR. There's never a dull moment. There's always something going on, something changing, whether you're thinking about employee relations and employee conflict, labor relations changing in the NLRB, or a big topic now, which is AI and what's that going to do for the world. So it's just never ending supply of something interesting, something to think about, some new challenge.
Know that you're consulting now. What kind of projects are you working on? If someone were to say, hey, why would I hire Andrew to help out in HR? What are the biggest areas of your experience that you've been helping clients with?
Most of my clients are looking at growth, which is an interesting time to try and grow, given the political environment we're in, the mass layoffs that we've seen, the demands to return to work or return to the office. And amidst all those challenges, you have small businesses all over the place that they're still ambitious, still trying to grow, expand from their markets. But they're not big enough to have a full scale HR team. These are entrepreneurial people. So they're looking for other experts to give them quality advice. And as an HR consultant, that advice can't just be about HR. You have to talk to them about how does HR make your business better? What does it do to either keep you out of risk areas, keep you in compliance with the new laws that now apply to you because you went from 10 to 20 employees or 20 to 100,
Yep.
as well as what are the other business implications for doing this or not doing this in the employment sector. If you can provide that sort of guidance, help people understand, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you how to get things done so that you can actually focus on your goals, grow your business, increase your client load.
Yeah, I love that strategy side of it because there's still so many CEOs and operations teams that don't look at their HR team as a strategic tool. It's always been more of a tactical, hey, we need to get this thing done so we don't get sued and payroll gets run. But as a small business owner, understanding the people function is probably one of the most important parts of growing a business.
I think the cliche thing that we all throw out there to these business leaders is, listen, you're spending most of your revenue on your personnel. It's almost always your highest cost output, but you don't focus on it because it's just people. And if you shift your focus and start thinking about it more strategically, then you're going to get more for those dollars you are spending. And then there's the personnel side of it. You spend more focused time on the people will notice it too. And then you're going to develop this reputation as the place to go work.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a small company. The pay's not as great as working for the giant conglomerate, but you know what? They treat people right. And so you get those kinds of balances. It can be really fun.
Yep.
Fun to help those leaders.
Have you worked for other companies where you had, and you obviously don't want to talk about names, but where you had bad employer brand names and you had to shift out of that?
Absolutely. I've had success in some of those instances, and I've had my failures in some of those instances. It was with a company that had this reputation of being brutal to their mid-level managers and incredibly generous to their frontline employees.
Mhm.
And so they had constantly getting new people wanting to work there, brand new at a grade school, high school, or college, but they couldn't keep them.
Yep.
So this great industry leader in their sector, great reputation with entry level folks. But as soon as you got to team lead, supervisor, manager, it was just horrible. It was like watching a marathon that you couldn't participate in. People were just running away from you.
Yeah. Or there was always, they're just, they, everyone would fail at mile 25. They just
Yeah.
dropped. And you're like,
Yeah.
you're there. You could walk. And they're like, no, desire.
The culture and the people focus was a big attractor. The challenge that organization had is there were so many people primed to enter the upper levels of either their individual contributor roles or their management roles that they just didn't have space for everybody.
Yeah.
So they ended up having to adopt the philosophy of you've got to support your folks even if they leave.
Yeah.
Because eventually what we found in that experience is they might go away as a frontline supervisor and come back to you as a director.
I've seen that and talked to so many VPs of TA where if the culture's right, the boomerang opportunities are almost endless.
Absolutely.
And it's hard to put these in numbers. How do you tell the CIO or the CFO that we're going to be able to drop our churn and decrease our marketing expenses in the future for recruiting because we did these things that were good for the employee that cost money today?
Yeah. I mean, it's getting that whole C-suite to understand the difference between turnover and retention. A lot of our leaders, our non-HR leaders, think of those as the same number. It's the same metric. No, one's sort of a leading metric and one is a lagging metric. Your turnover, you've already lost the game at that point. But your retention, you're doing something right. So if your retention's high, what is that doing for your organization? How is that benefiting your bottom line?
Yep. Did you, because we had mentioned frontline versus managerial levels in that company, were you guys watching the retention on the frontline versus managerial? Was that like a KPI? Because I know there's so many numbers you're going to try to track and it's hard to get good numbers anywhere in HR in a lot of cases.
In that organization, they were tracking turnover, but they weren't tracking retention. They had very low turnover, very good retention in that entry level role. But then once they got into, like I said, that team leader and supervisor area, they weren't paying attention to it. They thought this is the manufacturing environment and everything churned on the manufacturing floor.
Yeah.
But you're ignoring this critical linchpin role that's also on the manufacturing floor.
You had some thoughts I wanted you to share about the difference from your opinion, what AI is going to cause impacts on HR. So share your thoughts on that.
I like the AI revolution that we're in right now, but I think we're still at the early stages. There's a lot more excitement than traction, but the opportunity is there. HR is full of processes and systems. Sometimes they don't talk to each other. Sometimes they overlap, but it takes so much effort on the part of your HR team to make all those processes and systems work. And I think AI is going to really streamline that. Automation is not quite the right word because it's not just making the process automatic. It's making the process flow, from the beginning steps of hiring somebody all the way through to retirement and all the various things and the state systems and your tracking system and your HRS that sometimes work together, but not always. I think a lot of that's going to smooth out. And as that becomes more automated, it's also going to increase the demand from employees to talk to a person. The system's going to flow and the employees are going to want to know what happened, why this, when do I get that? And when we were in the agreement, we talked about this analogy came to me. It's think about going to the grocery store and every time you're in the grocery store, that automatic checkout lane, the no teller checkout lane, it's fast, it's easy, and there's 20 people waiting in the line for the one checker because they want that interaction. They want to talk to a person. Yeah. There's something reassuring about that for us as human beings. Finding the balance of those two things is going to be the big challenge for HR teams and businesses in general.
Yeah. And I'm a big data guy, and I think you laid it out like the hire to retire process is going to get more, the data is going to get better connected. I'm sure you've done numerous of these integrations over the years, the ones that work and the
Oh my
ones that
goodness.
you're
Oh
like,
yeah.
what the heck?
Absolutely. One of the greatest examples of where I think this is going to play out are things like leaves of absence. I live in Oregon State. I work with folks from all over, but gives you a sense of where the processes are. Oregon has one of the most challenging leave of absence processes because of the
Oh,
complexity
really?
of the laws. AI could streamline that, make that so simple. Use your data to not only help people that are in that process, but get predictive for you. Who's likely to need this? Who's likely to use this process? Who's likely to not understand it? But if you think about it, if you're the person in the midst of that leave of absence because you have a family member that's super ill or you yourself experience a healthcare crisis, warm touch.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
all that data streaming and all of that really excellent work has to have that finishing piece. And I think that's where the human being steps in and continues to play a role. The businesses, the organizations that can find that balance, utilize and maximize those AI tools, and with a really focused HR team, maintain that human touch, those are going to be the big winners of the AI revolution, in my opinion.
Yeah, interesting. Give me an example again for the audience of learning about some of the integration stuff that you've had, the goods and the bads. Over your 20 years in this space and going through multiple integrations, what's come down to you, like when a vendor's calling you or you know there's something that's broken in the team or in HR processes or across the business, and you're working with a CFO and the CIO or C-suite, what have you learned about the best process for implementing HR solutions?
The best thing to do is make sure you ask a lot of questions from everybody that's going to be affected by this thing. So
Yeah.
every leader and at least some of the frontline staff whose data is going to be filtering through this big internal system. Ask them what they think it's going to do. Because often what I've found is that when you get to implementation stage, it does everything it says it will do. The salespeople, they hype, that's their job.
Yep.
And then the tech guys come in and make the thing do what they say it's going to do. And then about half of your team, whether it's your ops leader or your frontline employee, whatever, half of that team's going to go, I didn't know that. I thought it was going to do this. Now you've got to figure out why your HRIS system doesn't also do scheduling for a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week system.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
why your ATS doesn't just automatically feed information into your payroll system because we didn't have a patch. Because that's what it can do that, but you didn't ask about that because you didn't ask as the CHRO, you didn't ask payroll to tell you what do they like, what do they don't like, what works, what doesn't work. I think the best process is really start slow so that you can end fast with a quick implementation and be flexible all the way through.
Yeah. And that's interesting because having been an entrepreneur in the HR tech space for 30 years, the biggest thing we always say from a vendor side, and I think it's almost like a cop out, is that the client's not prepared with their product, with their problem. And it's combo of that, but it's also up to the vendor to understand what the problem is.
The best processes I've found have always been the organization pushing information to the vendor. At the
Uh-huh.
same time, the vendor's pulling information out of them. So
Yeah.
I'm giving you all here's the data needs that I have. You're asking about, okay, what's your process needs? If I'm
Yep.
giving you process needs, you're telling me, okay, here's the data feeds. You've got to have that expectation. If the vendor's not asking you as many questions as you're asking them, they're not
Yeah.
paying attention. It's definitely a two-way street.
Have you used consultants before in doing HR integrations?
I've done them
Yeah.
with and without.
Yeah. What was and I only ask this because I know with AI, it's going to become a little bit more challenging because it's not straightforward for a lot of people. It's going to get a little bit more difficult to understand what the hell a vendor is trying to actually sell and the problem,
Yeah.
how they're going to solve it. So I'm wondering if there's going to be a bigger push for consultants that understand the business process as well as enough of the tech to be almost like the vendor guide to marry the two together.
Yeah. And I sit in the consultant space. The beauty of the consultant space is you're not tied to a solution. You're not
Mhm.
really even tied to an outcome. You're just being asked, help us figure out what this problem is and how to solve it. So you go in, and I think consultants are going to change because they're going to have to grow in their knowledge and expertise the same way the rest of us are around the AI models.
Yep.
But the beauty of the consultant is they're going to be able to go in and ask hard questions, things that as the CHRO, you become blind to, not because you're not paying attention, but because you've done it for so long.
Done it the same way. Priorities on your plate that are overwhelming that you don't
Yes.
have an extra 3 weeks to
The
put into this
process,
integration.
yeah, that we need this integration to be able to address is 120 steps long. When you talk to me as a CHRO, I tell you the first step, the 13th step, and the last step, because it just flows, right?
Yeah.
And then the consultant's the one that says, what do you do after that? And what
Yeah.
do you do after that?
Yeah.
So
It
again,
breaks at step 13.
and a CHRO, I could probably answer the question, but I haven't had to think about it in years.
Yeah.
So again, having that person that can come in and ask the unfiltered questions and push back on challenging assumptions is still going to be a valuable tool. The big consulting firms that are out there, they don't have this right now. So they'll be challenged. That's going to be opportunity for the next generation of consultants that are probably still in grad school or even undergraduate school. The old school consultants know how to ask challenging questions in a way that doesn't upset everybody.
So tell us about the types of customers and companies you're working for now. What's your focus? And if someone wanted to reach out and say, I got to get a hold of Andrew, how would they do that? And give us a little pitch about the consulting you're doing right now.
Yeah, a lot of the work I'm doing right now is helping those smaller organizations. They're starting to grow, but they don't have the capacity to add a whole HRT. So they need some support in a couple of different areas. There's a lot of administrative support stuff, but that's quick and easy. They really start to recognize that they need some assistance is going from a business where I'm doing everything myself. I'm the owner and I do it all. Everything. I'm responsible for everything. But now I've got to meet those responsibilities through delegated authority. And so helping those leaders let go of the doing and retain the thinking and decision making and help them lead those other folks that are trying to figure out, okay, how do I get this done? What's the right approach? There's a lot of leadership development. How do you help those leaders manage and lead people rather than just tell everybody the outcome?
Yeah.
I think the other space that I do a lot of work in is as soon as a company's got 3 people, the third person's complaining about the second person to the first person. So you got an employee relations issue, and those
Yeah.
can be really thorny and tricky because they're full of emotion, full of tension and things like that. Employee relations work can also transition into more engagement work. Have a problem surface. Okay, let's talk about how to solve that problem. And then let's talk about how to prevent that problem in the future.
Yeah.
I think the third big string of work that I do is on the labor relations front. A lot of years in labor union environment. It gives you some unique skills, contract negotiation, contract administration, grievance processing, arbitration prep, things like that. I will help a company that's either new to the union environment or if they've run into some roadblocks in that space.
Yeah. I think that's interesting, even for a small business leader to have someone who understands HR, but also knows the negotiation process. It's like having your own legal advisor as an HR person. They've done it in big things, they've done it in small things, and they can understand your size and the outcomes. As a small business owner, you've got to wear 13 hats that day. You never get enough time to do the one that's probably your vision. If someone can come in and say, yeah, I'm helping with HR and that, and we'll get these processes and we'll handle these people. But have you ever thought about this strategy, which there aren't that many people can help an SMB owner on strategy who knows their business? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
exactly.
interesting. Very good. Andrew, how do people get a hold of you and your company? We'll put the notes in the description on the podcast for us too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Andrew at loomis-hr-consulting.com. Real straightforward. That's the website, loomis-hr-consulting. I'm available on LinkedIn, Alignable, and on many other platforms as well. Just look for Andrew Loomis. I'm one of the few out there.
Thank you so much for your time. This has been fantastic, and I'm sure our HR following will get some tips and tricks.
I enjoyed the conversation, Jonathan. Thanks.
Thanks for spending your time here with GoHire Talks and listening to our guests. My intention has always been to create incredible content to help you in your career in recruiting, marketing, business, and leadership. We appreciate all of the insights and feedback you provide. If you've got guests you'd like us to have on the show, please let us know. Again, thank you for all your support.